And it's time to meet our guest Monica Kirja, a Ugandan lawyer advisor in the Norwegian Research Institute, who tells us how to analyze corruption with detachment and precision, a very useful expertise to understand the malversations that can lead to the squandering of public funds, but also to find the right solutions to remedy the most frequent abuses. From the embezzlement of COVID funds to the challenges of development aid, she shared her analysis and her hopes to our journalist Laurence Ostras. Monica Kirja, hello and welcome to Initiative Africa. You are a Ugandan anti-corruption lawyer. First of all, what are the specifics of corruption in Africa today? Is it really different from everywhere else?
It is and it isn't. I would say that you have, first of all, have to bear in mind that not all African countries are the same and that levels of corruption differ in different African countries. If you take the Corruption Perceptions Index as an example, the African countries are quite spread out over that index, and some countries are actually not that corrupt. Some countries like Botswana and Rwanda and Mauritius, they do quite well on the Corruption Perceptions Index, and others do very, very poorly. I think the bottom countries are from Africa. So I think what the difference is in Africa is how deep from other countries in the world where it's corrupt is how deeply corruption is embedded in society, how socially embedded it is, how accepted it is, how inevitable it seems, how much it's part of the politics and the economics, and how much it is almost essential and how the country functions. I think that's the difference with Africa.
You specialize in the health sector. A lot of COVID funds have faced corruption issues. How could this happen, according to you?
Well, you have to think about the fact that you had a situation where African countries received, in a very short amount of time, millions of dollars in development assistance for their COVID response, which was important and necessary. But these same countries already had weak anti-corruption systems and in many cases had oversight mechanisms that weren't working very well. So in this situation, when you have a lot of money coming into such a situation where public financial management is weak and not well developed, then corruption is almost inevitable. You have to think also how lockdown and the fact that people were working from home made this much more difficult, that normal oversight procedures could not work. Civil society participation was almost non-existent, especially where there were no good internet connections or there's not sufficient digitization of public information and government services for people to be able to follow what's happening online and digitally. So in a sense, it was, the conditions were ripe for a whole amount of money to be lost that was meant for COVID.
What potential solutions do you foresee?
And how can we reduce this in future? Well, that's, of course, not an easy question because we don't really have that much evidence or good examples of successful anti-corruption efforts and reforms, but we do have some. And we know that it's important to keep on strengthening transparency, to keep on strengthening accountability mechanisms, to continue with participation. Now, when it comes to participation, that's one area where Africa and many African governments seem to be faltering because the space for civil society is shrinking. More and more NGOs and civil society organizations are finding it difficult to do their work because they are in the business of, checking the power of the government. And if they are seen as being critical of very powerful people, honestly, many times their activities are curtailed and their work is made incredibly difficult and their licenses may be, revoked, making it impossible for them to do their work. But despite all these challenges, I think it's very important to keep on doing what we are doing, to keep on with the supreme audit institutions. Many of them already do a good job of pointing out where weaknesses are in public financial management. They already do a good job of auditing the public sector and showing where things went wrong. The only problem is that their findings are usually not followed through. So what we need is a commitment to follow through, and we also need to continue supporting those who are doing good and who are committed to following the rules.
What about development funds? Should there be more awareness from financial institutions? Because there have been a lot of improvements over the last decade with much more investigation about where the money is going. Are they doing enough, or should they be doing more?
Well, I think there's always room to do more and to do what you're doing better. So you're right that development finance institutions and bilateral development agencies have been doing quite a lot to protect development funding from corruption and to recover funds lost from corruption. They've put in place strong reporting and whistleblowing mechanisms so that people who find out about wrongdoing can report it. But I think that they could possibly do that better. They could make the information on how reports can be made more public. They could publicize a bit more what people who find out about wrongdoing can do. And they could also make it easier for people to report, especially maybe those who don't have access to computers, those who don't have access to mobile phones, because we find that a lot of these reporting systems depend on web-based platforms, and they also depend on toll-free hotlines. But the people who are affected by corruption might not always have access to these kinds of reporting channels. Obviously, because of how development finance institutions and bilateral development agencies cannot enforce the law in different countries where they give aid, they have limits in how far they can go in terms of punishing those who embezzle or steal development funds. But I think that still the way they investigate, the actions they take in terms of terminating contracts and holding people to account through dismissals and disciplinary action, that is still something and shows that they have a strong stance against corruption.
Monica Correa, you made an unusual new career choice to specialize in corruption. How did it come about?
Well, I don't know that it was a very conscious choice. I chose to specialize in development because I have a strong interest and commitment to social justice. And I was and still am quite an idealistic lawyer who wants the world to be a better place. So it was through my interest in social justice that informs my anti-corruption work and trying to make the world a better place.
And then from development, you went into corruption fighting. Why?
So when I was a young lawyer, I was appointed to be on a commission of inquiry in Uganda. It was on allegations of corruption in Uganda Revenue Authority. Yeah, I was only in my mid-20s at that time, so that whole experience left quite a deep impression on me. And then shortly after that, I started a PhD, and I wrote my PhD thesis on the role of commissions of inquiry in the fight against corruption in Uganda. And then I guess the rest is history. That's how I specialized in anti-corruption.
And you also teach to law practitioners, students online.
Yeah.
What do you hope to bring to this young generation?
Well, first of all, I hope to bring them hope and optimism. I think that sometimes working in this space, it can feel a bit hopeless because we don't seem to make that much progress. But through the teaching we do at the UFO Anti-Corruption Resource Center, we emphasize a lot what has worked and what has not worked. And we try to show successful examples of anti-corruption initiatives. And in sharing these examples with our audience, most of whom are development practitioners, we hope to inspire people that, change can happen, and change is a people-driven process. So if we can inspire some people to, drive change, to make changes, every small change makes a difference.
So you're a very keen observer of this young generation of lawyers, of law practitioners. Do you feel that the new generation of young Africans will really want to make a difference in governance?
Definitely. I think that we have many examples across the African continent. We have many social media journalists who publicize wrongdoing, who show when public money is being misused, who take pictures or share videos of, when a hospital that should have been built hasn't been built. We have lots of NGOs led by young people like Follow the Money and many other examples of strong activism, journalism, and people who are really committed to, as the African Union says, the Africa we want. I think that young Africans really want a future in which Africa is a continent that we can all be proud of, one that works for the people, and I really see a lot of hope in the young generation to make that happen.
Among the challenges this new generation will face is a rush for this new age of mining in Africa. This new rush of commodities that are needed in the green economy.
Yeah.
Many challenges here. You specialize in the public sector. What should be done to avoid issues of governance and instances of corruption?
Well, I think that one of the things that is really important when it comes to mining is that we as Africans need the capacity, not just in terms of the technology for the mining, but also in terms of the legal technicalities of some of these contracts that we enter into with much more developed economies. We need to have people in public office who are really committed to doing the best for their citizens to make sure that Africa gets the most out of these contracts. And of course, on top of that, we need the strong oversight to reduce corruption around mining. We need to do everything possible to improve transparency, to improve accountability in this sector. As I had said earlier, it's not easy because accountability mechanisms are weak, because so many people in power are, more preoccupied with amassing wealth than with, the citizens and the public good. But as I said before, I think that there are some pockets of resistance and people who want to do the right thing. And I think it's about finding those and building on them, and making sure that also we try to see what is working well, and we strengthen that and build on that for the future.
And finally, last question. Out of curiosity, would you consider going back to Africa to participate in this change?
I think about that all the time, and I am a very, very homesick African. I can tell you that. I would very much like to be part of the change in Africa. I am still Ugandan. I still have a Ugandan passport. I have only a work permit to be in Norway. So yeah, I'm looking forward to going back to make my contribution as soon as I'm able to.